One man, one mission. Watch all Walt Disney movies. This is Death by Disney. Hello, welcome to the Death by Disney podcast. Today I'm going to be reviewing a little movie called Fantasia. So I'm on a mission to watch all of the Disney films. There's only 2 rules to this mission. The first is that I have to watch all of Disney films, whether they be Marvel or Star Wars or just straight up Disney films. And the second rule is that I have to make a podcast episode about each movie that I watch. So if you've never heard of Fantasia, here is the actual plot of this movie. Well, there is no plot, because it's a collection of animated interpretations of great works of Western classical music, ranging from the abstract to depictions of mythology and fantasy and settings, including the prehistoric, supernatural, and sacred. So that sound means it is time for some trivia. Fantasia was released in 1940, and at the time it was one of the most successful films in terms of box office in North America. But it was so expensive to produce that it didn't break even until 10 years after it was released, so in 1950. Part of that was it was a really expensive film to make, but the other part of it was that the Second World War was raging in Europe and Asia, and that was a huge market for Snow White. They weren't able to capitalize on that. It was banned in 2 places, actually. One place kind of makes sense. It was banned in Ireland because the imagery was too satanic. And if you're thinking that's crazy that they would ban something like that, you have to remember Ireland at the time, this is the 1940s, was basically run by the church until much later. If the church said something should be banned, it was banned. So that wasn't surprising for me. The surprising ban was from Japan. This is 1940. Japanese minds are already starting to think that they will start a war with the United States eventually. It was banned because the Japanese government didn't want Japanese people to watch it, because they didn't want Japanese people to know that Americans were capable of creating beautiful things, which makes me wonder how many other Hollywood movies were banned in Japanese cinemas before the war. Another interesting fact is that the Nutcracker Ballet wasn't really popular in the United States before this film. So this film came out and it kind of did a lot to reinvigorate the popularity of this ballet. The next piece of trivia is that Igor Stravinsky was the only composer whose music was used in the film who was still alive at the time the film was released, and he was able to watch it, and he was not happy about it whatsoever. In fact, he wanted to sue Disney. He was really excited in the beginning that Disney was going to use this piece, The Rites of Spring, and he thought this was a great thing for him in his career, but the piece is all about evolution, and it portrays a kind of scientific but really dumbed down for children version of evolution, where you have like smaller creatures evolving into bigger creatures, and in the end, like in all thoughts about evolution at this time, you ended up with man, and man discovering fire and being really happy. That was the last bit of the piece of music and the animation. But Disney decided to cut it because he didn't want to offend creationists. The interesting thing that I've discovered about Disney through the process of watching a lot of Disney films is that he didn't really have a strong moral point of view when it came to his films. For example, if the film Lightyear had been produced now, it was produced relatively recently, but if Walt Disney had been alive when that movie was produced, so the controversy connected to that film is that there is a lesbian kiss in it, and it's just like a throwaway kind of scene. A woman and her girlfriend kiss, and that's it. But because of that, it was banned in China and banned in certain parts of the Middle East, obviously. And Disney said, no, we're not going to take it out. We have our moral principles. We're going to stand firm. But Walt Disney, he definitely would have cut it because all he cared about was making money. So in this case, he cut out the campfire scene because he didn't want to offend creationists. But equally, there is a part in the film, or there would have been a part in the film that ended with the Virgin Mary, and he was going to cut that in non-Christian countries. Disney has always been kind of a corporation that doesn't really have a moral point of view. The only point of view that it's interested in is making money and making art as well. Going back to the Rites of Spring and the scene with the dinosaurs look kind of inaccurate to what we know of dinosaurs now, but at the time, they were incredibly scientifically accurate, much even to the point where regular people they watched it and they were surprised because they didn't know this about dinosaurs. I think it's kind of the same thing with Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park at the time was the up-to-date knowledge of what we knew about dinosaurs. So eventually they're going to make another really famous dinosaur movie contemporarily, like I don't know what it will be, but they'll make one, and then in 30 years, 40 years, 70 years, people will be like, oh my god, you thought dinosaurs couldn't talk? So now we come to the time when I tell you what I actually think about Fantasia. This is the third film that Walt Disney released. After the studio's successes with Pinocchio and Snow White, it is clear that Walt Disney believed he was creating great art. And what could be better or more suitable as great art than the combination of high classical music with high animation? The film ultimately disappoints because of its pretension. The animation, while imaginative, is not as great as the previous two films. The live-action interlude with the famous conductor is an artifice that does not hold up and shows why further films of this nature were not produced. Especially irksome is the statements that the conductor makes that the animation successfully does this, or the animation perfectly does something. Animation should show you what it does. It shouldn't have to be explained to you during the film itself. I honestly hated this and was bored by it. But what is something positive that can be taken from this film? The first is that Disney animators were masters of horrifying animation. The section with the devil and the devils playing must have been inspirational to heavy metal artists of the 1980s. The other thing, most definitely unexpected by Walt Disney, is that this film, while mind-numbing to a sober person, could be quite enjoyable for someone who had taken mind-altering substances of any type. Okay, now it's my time to provide what other people have thought about this film. So I like to take a good review from the Internet Movie Database and a bad review from the same site. This is the featured review. It reads, unusual and very creative. This unusual and very creative classic of animation combines a very interesting idea with quite a bit of imagination, plus visual effects that still hold up quite well. All but a couple of the sequences are quite enjoyable, and some especially so. Even the segments that don't work as well are usually at least interesting, since you can at least appreciate what they were trying to accomplish. You don't really have to be all that familiar with the specific pieces of music for it to be worthwhile, since in several cases they chose to match the music with material that is rather different in nature from any original context that it may have had. And in any case, the animated sequences are intended to provide the context in terms of the movie. No doubt everyone will have his or her own favorite segments based on the music itself and on the choice of accompanying visual material. The Sorcerer's Apprentice sequence with Mickey Mouse is certainly one of the most memorable. The adaptation of The Rite of Spring is quite imaginative in using an entirely different setting for the music. Night on Bald Mountain has striking and sometimes bizarre visuals. Many of the classic Disney features hold up well as family entertainment, but Fantasia is unique for its combination of imaginative concept and visual creativity. Not every minute of it works, but that's the price of being willing to experiment. It's an enjoyable and satisfying feature that well deserves to be remembered, and that is from Snow Leopard, November 5th, 2004. I do agree that the film is visually stunning. I do not agree that it's enjoyable. It's memorable, but not enjoyable. I really hated it, as I mentioned in my review. I thought certain parts were quite visually stunning, but I thought the whole idea was pretentious and boring and too long. So, to support my argument that Fantasia is not a great movie, here is a negative review. So, to balance the negative, here is my review. And this is from EJC 1530, May 2011. I know I will be called a troll, but I don't get this. Feel free to check out my other posts. I am not a troll, and I apologize if people find me to be one. I watched it because it was the only movie in the AFI Top 100 I had not seen. Everyone I talked to about this told me it was terrible. I have never heard an actual person say anything good about this. I looked at the threads and really don't see anyone ripping the movie. I have never heard a negative review, so I had hopes, as I have liked many movies my friends and family have hated. I watched it thinking my friends and family were wrong, but I found them to be correct. I can't put into context what was bad, except I felt like it was nothing more than a series of meaningless cartoons meant for someone on heavy drugs. See, that was not what I said. The closest I can compare to anything I have ever seen is some psychedelic hippie movies that I would never have forced myself to sit through. It was like a bad Pink Floyd album, like Atom Heart Mother Sweet, Saucerful of Secrets, or Umaguma, or the Beatles song Revolution Number 9. Only this lasted 2 painful hours. He knows a lot of bad Pink Floyd albums. I don't know any of those. It seems to be pretentious tripe that everyone who is anyone has to say is good, but it seems average people hate it. I truly want to find an actual person who likes this so they can explain to me why. Maybe I lack class, always a possibility. Maybe I'm not smart enough, always a possibility. Out of over 3,200 movies ranked, I have only given 10 other rankings of 1. I feel I am being unfair to the other ones by giving this a 1. it is so much worse. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I haven't met anybody who liked it also, but art is very subjective. There are people who really, really like things, and you watch it and you're like, oh, this is so bad. So for me, for all of the reasons they mentioned, both it is visually stunning, but it's far too long, it's boring and pretentious. But what do you think? Do you think I'm wrong? And do you think the negative reviews of this film are wrong? Or do you think it does hold up?